This is the Matatu Film Stage podcast powered by cinemaredpill. I'm Sharon Rakatungu, and we're going to have a behind-the-scenes look at Sharimwanika's I Eat What I Like. So, I eat what I like. Let's start from the beginning, which is maybe
very
like
good place to start.
Perfect way to get into the film. I think that the beginning of the film really stands out with how it looks. Wait, actually, I have to start with something else.
Okay.
Can we start with the title?
Definitely.
Could you tell me about your process of coming up with that title?
Alrighty. So it's a very funny story actually. The film was initially called The Dealer.
What? Okay.
Because the story was very different. The story was like the mom and the daughter have a dealer. You know, like a drug dealer but for sex toys. Am I allowed to say those words? On radio I kept saying it and they were like, you can't say sex. Sorry, it's about sex. So they like separately are trying to meet up with the dealer and hiding from each other, and then they end up meeting the dealer at the same time. Then the story changes to what you've seen it is now. Yeah. And it was still called The Dealer, and I was trying to figure out, man, am I going to change the name? What's it going to become? And I have a very weird relationship with food, right? I'm quite picky. Like, I can decide I want rice and beans for breakfast, and then I want eggs for dinner. Like, I eat how I want to eat. I eat what I like. Yeah. So one time I was at Bad Mama Jama's actually. I was at Nicole's office and I ordered potato salad for breakfast. And it came in and someone was like, what are you doing? Like, why are you eating? And I was like, I eat what I like. And it just clicked. And I was like, that's the title of my film. Because I'm like, it plays on, like, it was initially about food, but I eat what I like also just plays on like sex and sexual freedom. And like, I do what I like. People have sex the way they like. People have different sexual orientations. Just, yeah, that freedom that I think we should have with like what kind of pleasure you seek from sex. Yeah, that's where that came from.
But like, it rhymes, it's just everything. Okay, let's get into the film. The beginning. Scene. Tell us about that. Like, the lights and everything are really pretty. I don't know how you achieved that look, as well as the music that's going on there. Like, those are two things that I really like.
I can talk in detail now. I can talk like people have watched it at this point. Cool. So the intro scene was obviously a masturbation scene. Yeah. And that was a really important scene for me because of how I'm like, sex is taboo, but masturbation is just something we're all like.
Especially for women.
Even women, like even doing it, I know I've had experiences where like you feel so bad. You feel yucky.
Like a guilt.
Guilt, yeah. And so for me, it was just like, I just want to put that in your face right from when you start. Also because I knew that the rest of the film was not really going to be very like sexual. Yeah. I was like, let me do this nice thing in the beginning. But also, the reason, when I first wrote the scene, wrote the film, before it became what it was, a lot of that character, Sasha's journey was on accepting her body and like accepting her sexuality and like, why am I interested in this now? Why do I like playing with myself? Why do I want a sex toy? Which I think didn't come through in the film as much, which is okay. We live and we learn, but that's where that came from. The music, it's a song by Karun, and I always forget his name, and it's Uganda. Faisal, I can't say his name, it has a lot of X's, Mystrax or something. He's like an experimental musician. Okay. And the first time I heard that song, I knew I wanted it, and I knew I wanted it for that scene. Just because of like, it just sounds like edgy and uncomfortable, and like, it just made sense. I'm also like Karun's biggest fan in the whole world. And I really also wanted like, so the thing about me is, as I'm being creative, my mind is always thinking, how do I keep this within like my East African community? How do I put other creatives on? So I was like, I want as much East African music on there. So that's where that came from. And like, happily we got that song. The light, for me, was just very much more from like a visual creative direction perspective of these are the colors of the film. And that was one of my strong colors, the pinks, the orange, the purples. Those are the colors I focused on. That's where the pink light came from. Emma Gash made that magic happen. Oh, you don't know Emma? Wow.
Not
Okay,
like you
I
said
feel
it
like
like it was an
yeah,
obvious name.
in my head I'm like
Unfortunately,
everyone in
no.
Kampala. If it comes to
Maybe not.
lighting, you know
I
him.
think.
Maybe it's just me. Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, but Emma Gash, who for me, he's like he has a shirt that says "fuck natural light," and I'm like, that's Emma.
What?
So yeah, because what I really wanted with that pink light, I remember I kept telling him, I don't want it to look like they're just pink bulbs everywhere. I wanted to still like I didn't want it to be like super, you know, when you have a color of light and it's really dark and the shadows are harsh and like the contrast between shadow and highlight. I didn't want that. I still wanted that flat look, that ethereal look.
Yeah.
And he really gave that to me.
Did you at any point toy with or think you would have more explicit sex in the film? Like, I know we're more prudish, but did you ever think like maybe that's something you'd want to try? And did you have hang-ups for that or anything?
I didn't. I think my focus really was the sex toy.
The sex
It
toy
really
was the
was
story.
it really was the story from the beginning. Like it's always been the sex toy. When I lived in Cape Town, I lived next to a store called Adult World. They pretty much just sold like a bunch of sex toys and like pornography tapes, and it was legal. Like you could walk in there, and I used to go there a lot with my best friend slash house. Not a lot, but like sometimes we were bored and we'd be like, let's go to Adult World, or I would be like, come with me, let's take a walk. And one time we were there, and I was like, imagine you walk in here and like you find your auntie. And that's kind of also where that story started with all the other influences. So I think for me, it's always been the sex toy. Also, very interestingly, someone that did something on the film, when they watched it, they were like, that's all. You mean the beginning is it? And I was like, that's such a man thing to say. Because like you guys, when you think of sex, you think super graphic. And I'm like, sex is nuanced and it's so many things. It's not just the graphic aspects of it, number one. Sex is not only penetration. Like, so I think for me, I'm happy that it's not very visually what the film is about.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you're talking about say that experience in South Africa, I think about how the opposite is here. Like there's no sex shop anywhere, and I think it's literally illegal, like on paper.
Yeah.
Because you can't export.
Yeah.
Like they'll catch it there. It just has to be hidden in ways. Like how like did you have that in mind as well? Like since this is set in UJ, and how are you thinking maybe the audience will take it, since that's also our system just doesn't let you read.
You know, now that you asked that question, the sex toy we used in the film, I don't even know how we got it. Shout out to like the production design team, because it's a real sex toy. I'm like, where did you guys get that? Anyway, something very interesting with this film is, because someone has asked me a similar question during the crowdfunding. I had a lot of concerned like family members who are like, listen, we support you, however, do you know the kind of backlash you can get? Like the Ugandans who, if they see this, if like UCC sees this, and I don't know why. I don't know if it's like I live in a bubble where maybe I'm with a lot of like-minded individuals, so I forget that there are other views, but I've never really had those concerns.
Yeah. Not like even I'd be thinking it's like it would spark something in someone. Say someone who's like, okay, now like, oh, masturbation is chill, but there's nowhere to like get the toys.
Oh, you're saying what if someone wants to
like
delve into that?
Yeah, to delve into that. Like did it like it's something I thought about. So I'm just actually portraying my thoughts really.
Okay, I get that, and I honestly
I
have not put that to thought.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see how people react
to that. Yeah. I have actually not thought about that. Like, that's something people can leave the film with.
Yeah.
Like, not just the conversation, but like, oh man, actually, what if I want to try one of those?
I want to try that toy. That's
a very good point.
Yeah.
That's a very good point. Tell them to DM me. I think I have some. I think I can find some sources. I've actually seen a couple like of Instagram stores.
I see them on Twitter. Well, there's pages there. I don't know how they secure
their stuff.
Yeah.
But
places are there. Okay, I want to talk about a major theme in the film is Christianity and how much repression comes from that. I found that like maybe one of my favorite themes about it because it's so annoying. Like it takes a long time for you to get out of that repression. Could you tell me about your process of having that theme in the story and bring it out?
For me, the reason that theme is in the story is I think it's my lived experience. I grew up like, okay, I wouldn't say like my family was super Christian. My mom was like very like into Jesus. My dad, not really. We went to church, but it wasn't like, oh, we are a Christian family. However, when I was about 13, I moved to a Christian school, like a full-on Baptist Christian school. It's called Word of Life. And purity culture was drilled into us to the extent of it wasn't just physical, it was also about emotional purity. We read this book called Emotional Purity. So just know that culture was drilled into me. And then coming into myself, becoming an adult, becoming a woman, going to South Africa, having to unlearn those things, I'm still doing now. Like I'm still I think I'm kawa now, like I think I'm good. And then something happens or a thought comes and I'm like, nah, girl, you're still dealing with it. So that was a big thing. The second thing for me was, I think that sometimes Christians are in denial about just how human they also are. You'll notice like in the film when they break the fourth wall and they're kind of doing those monologues, like, yes, they're all women in the church, but one of them is like, in my previous church, they actually told us to explore. The other one is like, me, I don't mind, just do it discreetly. I wanted to kind of also bring out that nuance of like, man, I have no problem with your faith. Your faith can be your faith. But a big issue is the silencing that you guys do within that culture of your faith. And you're silencing other people. The people in position of power are silencing other people without realizing they're silencing themselves. Yeah, at the same time. So, yeah, and I just thought it would be something that a lot of people in the audience would relate to because I think people experience that. And then again, my relationship with my mom and her being very like pro Jesus.
Oh god, yeah, it really comes through. The actors, I really like that breaking the fourth wall scene. Could you tell me about it? Were you letting them play as well? It just looked so freeing.
So I definitely had like, that's the one part of the script where like I wrote that whatever they would say, but then when I met the actresses, I told them, make it your own. Like switch up the words, but this is the general flow of what your character should communicate. Other than that, in terms of breaking the fourth wall, I think Spike Lee does it a lot and I love Spike Lee. So I was kind of just like, I want to do that too.
It works really well.
Thank you. And I just thought it would be like comedic. I don't know.
It is.
That it would be comedic and like funny and cool. So that's why I put that in there. And I felt that it would give those three characters they just needed that moment to also stand out, and it kind of fills in their characters a bit because before that they're kind of just the church women who have come to pray. Yeah. And I felt like in that moment you get a little bit into like their minds.
Their own minds. Yeah. Outside of the performance.
Yeah.
Another thing that really was great is seeing the mom come into her sexuality and seeing her still a woman interested in sex. That was really great. Was it very intentional to do that?
It was, because guys, even older women, they like sex and they should have sex.
Yeah.
And the whole thing, the reason I put in that thing of the sex therapist and her saying that, you know, she's helping me work through some things in my life is, it's not something that I've experienced or seen, but it's something that I wonder why a lot of people don't talk about. And it's just how much sometimes like married women go through and suffer in sex with their husbands because of like the narrative that like sex is something women give and something men take and it belongs to the man. And I'm like, with that narrative, I can't even imagine, I don't know, the trigger warning, but I can't even imagine how many women have gone through like marital rape, or how many women don't even actually know what they like or how they like to be touched because they've just given into pleasing him. You know, you have to pretend to like what's happening. So that was really important for me to put in there. Yeah.
Great, really, really great. Coming from making this film, and you also have done research on women and their sexuality, is there something that stood out to you that you learned in this filming process that you came out knowing afresh?
In terms of the subject matter?
Yeah, in terms of the subject matter.
After I made the film?
After you made the film.
Oh, you know what? Men are more aware than we think they are.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I'm not giving them credit. I'm just saying they're not as ignorant as we think they are. Because I had men on the set, and my biggest worry was like, are they going to make the women feel uncomfortable? I'm like, I don't want to create an environment where this is the kind of story I'm telling, but this is happening offset. And when I would hear their conversations, because obviously when you're making a film, you're talking about a lot about those kinds of stuff, they are more aware than we think they are, which was very interesting to me, and which meant that in this conversation of sex and what it means for women, if men are aware, then let's not let them slack, in being part of kind of making the dynamic more balanced. That's if you're someone who has sex with men. What else did I come out with? I think that's the main thing I can think of at the moment.
That's really great one. So besides this theme that you explored here, is there any other theme that you've toyed with a lot, even though it's in any other art form?
Okay. No, I think where I am in my journey as an artist, even when I look back at my films I made in school, I'm really stuck on like obviously women, but intergenerational relationships. I'm really there right now. I won't lie. I haven't really thought of other films. I think it has to do with the fact that I'm not close to like my mom's side of the family, and it's a family where like the women really lead. It's very matriarchal. And I've just grown up seeing, because of that and how they have influenced me, I think that connection and how open they've been with, outside of sex, just conversations and life, has made, I find that that can be a very powerful site of like, I guess, unity between women.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think right now, like story wise, that's where I am. This theme is still related. I really, really, really love stories and like romance.
Nice.
So maybe that's something else. But right now, that's where my mind
That's nice.
has been.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, my last question is for you to like give a piece of advice to anyone who's going to be a first-time director, because this was your first time directing, right? Like, what piece of advice or any words you'd have for them?
All right. The first piece of advice I would give you is real imposters do not get imposter syndrome. Therefore, you're not an imposter. You belong in that space. Yeah. You deserve to wear that director's hat. You deserve to be in charge. If you're young and if you're a woman, don't be afraid of being in charge. Don't be afraid of knowing you have the power to tell people what to do on your set and what not to do. You have that power. It is yours. You're not being mean. You're not being rude. That's the first thing I would say.
Those are good words. Imposter syndrome is too real.
That's the first thing I would say. Like you belong there. Another thing I would say to a first-time director, man, build a team around you, not just based on their skill level. It's not just about how good they are at the thing. It's about how well you work together. It's about how much they to a certain extent, like how much they believe in your story. But I think mostly how well you work together, how well they can blend as a team as well. And also, I always say, like, I am where I am because other women have always, when they held my hand. If you can, create that opportunity on your set, whether it's as an intern or an assistant or even a full-on role. If you can create that opportunity for people, it's your first time, let someone else have their first time. And the last thing I would say is, man, in that period, like, rest. Like, I don't know if you can, just rest and like have as much me time as possible. Because while you're on set, you're just absorbing and giving so much. and you can lose track of like what you're trying to communicate because you're like playing with so many different elements of the story. You have to keep the group together. So have those moments after set or before to kind of just center yourself, remind yourself why you're doing what you're doing. And as hard as it might be, I personally think making films is so hard. Keep going.
Yeah, this is really great. Your film is amazing.
Thank you.
Inspiring. Like,
Thank you.
I've learned a lot
I really appreciate
from this
this.
conversation.
This has been a great conversation. I feel like you made me tap into when I was coming here. I was like, I don't know if I remember even why I made this film, but I'm like, it's still there.
Yay!
So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. This is the Matatu Film Stage podcast powered by cinemaredpill. I'm Sharon, and that was a behind the scenes look at Shari Mwanika's I Eat What I Like.